Thanks everybody for joining us today. So my name's Aaron. I'm with IPC's Education Foundation. We have Lissa Bernstein here. She is a career consultant and human resources business partner. She's going to give our presentation today. I'll be in the background monitoring chat, Q&A, so just a couple of housekeeping items. As of now, everybody is muted. If later on, we will do a Q&A at the very end, and I will allow you to unmute and talk if you would like. So if we get to that and you do want to speak, just go ahead and raise your hand or type something in the chat and I'll check it and I'll unmute you. But so nobody interrupts Lissa on accident or anything like that, I am going to leave people muted for now. As the presentation goes on, Lissa, it can take questions at the moment or at the end. So if you do have a question for something right away, feel free to post that in the Q&A or the chat. We will look at both of them as we go on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we've got a handful of attendees and they look pretty much ready to go. So I'm going to get us kicked off here. So let's see. So I'll just give a short bio. So Lissa is, as I mentioned, an HR BP with MRA, and she also owns a consulting company where she does human resources work. She does a lot for both IPC and companies in the industry, and I'll let her share more about her bio and what she believes is relevant information. But we thank everybody for joining us today, and I'm going to hand it over to her. You'll see me in the background. Please feel free to engage again with chats and Q&As and anything in that regard. We expect to wrap up within an hour. That's the general time frame. We might get done sooner, but we'll try not to go over to respect everyone's time. So without further ado, Lissa, they're all yours.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. As Aaron said, I am an HR business partner. I'm employed by a company called MRA. We are an employers association. So we are an association just like IPC is, and we specialize in people, in human resources, and support companies in that fashion. So I support IPC in that way with their human resources effort and have been working as a HR business partner with IPC for about 16 years, actually. And then I also have my own business, which is a career consulting business. And I work with individuals on a very personalized level in terms of finding careers, how to get there, interviewing, job coaching, job searching, coaching on interviewing, and resume writing and cover letters and all that good stuff. So a lot of what I do as a business partner is recruiting and other projects as it relates to HR. And then my other business complements that in that I'm helping individuals. So I'm familiar with both sides and able to work with people and really understand both what individuals need to do in their job search, but what companies are looking for. So to help, other individuals through the process. So that's what we'll talk a little bit about today. I'll give you some tools and tips in terms of, how do you go about finding that first internship or job? And then, once you land it, what do you want to do once you get there? So we can talk about that. And then, you'll walk away with some hopefully good tools to use, some good resources. And as Aaron said, I'm happy to take questions as we go. If you want to type anything into the chat, he will monitor it. You can definitely interrupt me, Aaron, if something's relevant to be answered in the moment, and I'd be happy to do that. And we'll definitely have time at the end for questions and just try to keep things going here. So we will get started. So where do you start in this whole process when you're looking for your first job or internship? Where do you go? How do you begin things? So one of the best resources, if you're still in school or a graduate or a recent graduate, is to go to your career services department at your school. They have all sorts of support that can help you, people, resources. They'll probably help you, write your resume, edit your resume, help you with a solid cover letter. How do you network, in terms of where do you look? How do you connect with people? Maybe they can connect you with a mentor, somebody that can work closely with you that maybe has worked in the industry or has a job that you'd like to achieve and have someday. or connect you with a professor. Maybe some of you already have mentors, that you're working with that are professors or other individuals, but that's a great resource as well. And then they can also provide you with just, general job search support and information. So it's a good place to go. And they can help you, get started on your professional journey. Okay, so then one of the first things you need to have done in this whole process is your resume. So for those of you that have your resume together already, that's fantastic. I would definitely recommend you have somebody review it. It's always good to have a second set of eyes on your resume. But for those of you that don't have a resume, or maybe want to tweak your resume or update it, we'll go through some good tips and information that you should include here. So you always want to have your name at the top, your contact information. It's not necessary to have an actual address, physical address where you live. It's better to have a city and state only. And maybe you're thinking about moving. So maybe you want to put that city and state, or maybe you have a city and state where you're in school and then your home residence. Obviously, there's a lot of jobs that are remote or hybrid now, and it maybe doesn't matter so much where you're located, but I always find it helpful to at least have an idea of where people are located when I'm reviewing resumes. So city and state are enough. Your email, your cell phone, your LinkedIn link, that's all really important. And then getting into the resume itself, if you are a recent graduate, or you are still in school, graduate school or undergrad, wherever you may be in your education journey, you want to put that in reverse chronological order. So you want to have your graduate school listed first, and then below that, your bachelor's. And what's important here is that, if you do have a solid GPA, that's great, but really only include it if it's a 4.0 or higher. I mean, and always put your expected graduation date or the date of graduation. Month and year is perfectly fine. If it's been a long time since you've graduated, it's not necessary to include the year, but for those of you that are recent grads or soon to be recent grads, include the expected graduation date. The other thing that's important, obviously, what sort of degree you're getting, majors, minors, but any awards that you've received at school or for a particular area, or maybe like critical coursework that you've taken that might pertain to the job that you're looking for. Any leadership activities that pertain to your education, or certifications that you might have obtained, all under the education area, or education / professional development could be another header for that section. Another important area on your resume is the core skills or technical skills or areas of expertise. And you may not be an expert in everything that you want to do. So a good way to say this is to say core skills and areas of interest versus areas of expertise, or technical skills and areas of interest, if you are not an expert yet in those areas. So let's say you're interested in electrical engineering, but you just have only taken a couple classes. You may just want to list electrical engineering under this section, but call it areas of interest. So keywords are really important. These would be things that you do have skills and experience with, or things that you're interested in. And again, these are things that pertain to you. So, the best thing to do is just Google some, keywords for, or look up job postings for a particular, or internship postings that you might be interested in, and see what kind of keywords are listed in those postings. It might say, they're looking for somebody who's really good with detail, or great with spreadsheets, or has a degree in electrical engineering, or whatever it may be. And that's a good place to pull some of that information or some of those words from, in addition to, just Googling and, Googling whatever the job is that you want. And that'll probably help you too. In addition to going back to career services, I'm sure they would have lots of resources around that as well. Okay, moving right along, your work or internship experience is really important. Again, reverse chronological order. So the most recent should go first, and you're going to list the name of the organization. You're going to list the title of the job that you held. I think it's helpful to have a little blurb, no more than a sentence, about what the company does that you worked for or the organization that you had that job or internship with. A short summary that explains, who the company is. And then in terms of dates, you want to include just the years. So let's say you had an internship last summer and the summer before at the same place. You would just say summer 2020 and 2021 and include that next to the organization. Months are not necessary, even if you've been somewhere only 3, 4, 5, 6 months, or it was just a summer job. It's less is more as you're writing the resume. So just putting summer and the year is perfectly acceptable. And then how you describe what you did. How do you do that? What did you do at your internship or at your job, whatever the job may be? So we're going to look at these CAR statements. So CAR stands for challenge, action, and result. So every job that you should have at least 2 to 3 bullets that describe what you did at that company, in that internship, at that job. So you're going to set the context, what challenge did you overcome? What was the situation? Then you're going to use action verbs that begin each phrase. So what action did you take to resolve the problem? And then define the challenge or define the situation. And below, I've included a few examples that explain this. So the first one, a CAR statement, would be administered $1 million budget and negotiated maintenance contracts with outside agencies in support of $60 million worth of equipment. Granted, a lot of you may not have that kind of experience yet, but it gives you an idea of what a CAR statement is and how it should be written. Another example below is redesign the packaging of a leading computer hardware company, resulting in 1 million annual cost savings and a 50% reduction in air pollutants. So one of the big things here, and one of the things I like to see, and hiring managers and recruiters like to see on resumes, is numbers. So if you're able to quantify something, that's fantastic. If maybe your job was data entry and you were entering information into a system, talk about how much information you entered, or did you meet the goals or the quota or the requirements of that position, or were you able to save the company money in some way, shape, or form? How much did you save? Did you have some sort of specific goal or achievement that you could quantify and explain? So that's real important. So you can see that these CAR statements, do quantify, which is helpful to somebody reading it. And you can also see that they're short. It's not a long run-on sentence. It's short, to the point. You want to make things very easy for the person reading your resume. You want it to be straightforward and to the point. Okay. So that is the first part of the resume. Then you also want to have volunteer experience. And if you don't have volunteer experience, that's okay. But if you do, that's even better. If you volunteered anywhere while you've been in school, I would include that, whether it pertains to your area of the job that you're looking for, the internship you're looking for, or if it doesn't. It just shows that you give back, you spend your time doing something, contributing to an organization. And so you want to lay that out just like you would the work or internship experience. You would list the organization, you would list the job title you held there, or volunteer title that you held there. Could just be volunteer, as simple as that. And a little bit about the organization, and maybe 2 bullets about what you did there. So pretty straightforward. So here's just a few other reminders and tips when you're writing a resume. So I mentioned some of these things at the beginning, but I can't stress them enough. But really, you want to make sure you have all pertinent and key words that are relevant to the internship or job you're looking for, things that you have experience in, but also things you're interested in. And you want to make a really good first impression. So there's some other things that you always need to keep in mind. Spell and grammar check. There should not be a single spelling error on your resume. Grammar check, and it's so easy now, as we all know, to just do that. You want it to be neat, clean, succinct, in formats and fonts. You want it to be easy to read. Always have somebody else edit it or review it, because somebody else's eyes are going to catch something that you didn't. And, none of us are perfect. And even a spell check on a computer may not catch something. So another person might catch something. So it's always good to have somebody look it over. I mentioned this in the beginning about having your contact information. I do tend to see a lot of AOL email addresses still, which is kind of crazy. I'm sure most of you do not have AOL email addresses, but something like a Gmail, something current, makes the most sense on your resume. And then you want to keep it to 1 page to 2 pages at most. I get a lot of questions about how many pages should my resume be? I've heard it only can be 1 page. Well, you know what? It can be more than 1 page. And you'll see as you have more experience that your resume will need to go to 2 pages. For most students, I would say it should be around 1 page. If you go over 1 page, that's perfectly fine. It's just because you have a lot of experience or volunteer work or other things that are relevant and important to list. But before you get to that 2-page mark, make sure that you are being succinct in what you are saying and you're not being too wordy, because sometimes it's as simple as that, just taking out all the extra words and simplifying things, and you might get it down to 1 page, but it is okay to go to 2 pages. Again, less is more. And then when you're applying to any jobs or internships, one of the main things to do is save it as a PDF and upload it as a PDF. That goes for your cover letter as well. Don't send it as a Word document, send it as a PDF, because people are looking at these documents on tablets, on phones, on computers, and they're going to read the way you want them to be read if you save it and send it as a PDF. So, okay. Any questions right now, or should we?
Yeah, we actually do have a couple.
Okay.
So we'll start with one. Do you think having a web portfolio as a college student would help in getting internships or jobs?
If it's a creative type of a job, yes. So I do think that's very helpful if that you need to provide examples. And typically that's more for creative types of positions, but it could be for non-creatives too, depending on what the job requires. Well, one of the things I would say is that make sure you're reading the job postings closely and make sure you're following directions. If they tell you to send a resume and a cover letter, send a resume and a cover letter. If they say they'd like to see a portfolio of work, make sure you save a web portfolio of your work and send the link to that. So just follow the directions. It's not necessary, but it could be requested for some positions.
Okay, thank you. We do have one more, kind of two. I think they're getting along the same lines.
Okay.
So how would you use a car, like the framework, for a different industry? So like a lot of college students are coming from, non-technical jobs. How do they frame those for the jobs they want?
So you really need to focus the car statements on the experience that you've had. So the focus is not so much on the car statement, it's more in the areas, the skills, technical skills or core skills and areas of expertise. That's where you're going to focus more on the job that you want. So, maybe you've only had experience working in a restaurant. It doesn't pertain to an engineering position. So you're going to have to focus more in that core skills and areas of expertise, which usually would be at the beginning of the resume underneath your name and your contact information. So under here, you would have a section called, summary or core skills and areas of interest or areas of expertise. And that's where you might have a sentence or two summarizing a little bit of your experience or education and listing in maybe a bullet format some of the keywords that you do have experience with, but also things that you're interested in.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers the question.
I hope so. I'll find out in the chat. Thanks.
Okay, anything else?
Not at the moment.
Okay, I'll keep moving. All right, so that is resumes. Now we're gonna move on to cover letters. And cover letters are important. A lot of people ask me, do I need a cover letter? And the answer is 9 times out of 10, you should have a cover letter. And I am a big fan of, as I said, of less is more, but it's a way for you to speak and summarize a little bit about your skills and experience and education, and also let them know that you've done your homework, that you're interested in the company, why you're interested in the company, and how you can add value to the company. So you want to customize your cover letter for each job to which you apply. Now, doesn't mean you can't have a template that you work from, but you're going to customize it for each job. So you're going to let them know why you're interested in their company and how you were made aware of the job opportunity. Were you referred by someone? Did you find the job on LinkedIn or the internship on Indeed? So you want to mention that. If you were referred by someone at the company, you want to mention that in your cover letter. It's all about who we know, and it's all about making those connections. So by including somebody's name within the organization or within another organization that made you aware of the position, that's really important to get your foot in the door. You also want to talk about how your skills and experience align with the employer's job requirements. So you want to say, you're looking for somebody who has a degree in engineering, in mechanical engineering, and I just completed my degree in mechanical engineering last month. I'm really passionate about the industry, something to that effect. You want to talk about why you're interested in working for that particular company. What is it that attracted you to that company? Do your research, go to their website, talk about maybe some of their achievements that you read about, or see if they're in the news and, pull a tidbit, a little story or a success that they've had and reference that in your cover letter. And then in your cover letter, you also want to let them know that, you're excited about the opportunity. You want to, you look forward to taking those next steps and hearing from them. So it's really important to personalize every single cover letter for every internship or job that you apply to. And you're going to sign it with your name and your contact information. And then again, you're going to save it as a PDF, and you will send that along with your resume, if it's requested, to the company. So you just want to take time to write a cover letter for each job. Okay. So any questions about cover letters?
I don't have a question directly about cover letters, but I think I can summarize one that came through. Okay. How do you try to create a resume and a cover letter and a portfolio when you don't have a lot of experience with what you're going into?
Right. And that's okay. And that's okay to explain that in a cover letter, more so in terms of what you're interested in versus something you may have a ton of experience in, because it's just the facts. You're going to be graduating soon, or you just haven't had an opportunity to get all of this experience yet. It shouldn't, be a roadblock, but you want to talk about the things that you're interested in, or potentially bridge why you're interested in that company to maybe some of your education, or possibly some of your volunteer experience, or maybe you wrote a paper and you could speak to that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be having all of this experience. It's more about just making those connections, in terms of why you're interested in the job or internship and why you may be qualified in that job or internship. It doesn't have to be a long list. It could just be a couple of things that you highlight and mention.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right, I will keep moving here. We're going to talk about networking and LinkedIn. So we all connect with people, and the best way to find a job or an internship is through networking. And what is networking? Networking is just connecting with people. And with social media now, especially LinkedIn, it is an easy, great way to connect with other people and to help yourself get that first foot in the door. So I am big on using LinkedIn and connecting people, which I'll talk about in a minute. But before that, going back to career services and just going back to your schools, you want to ask for letters of recommendation also, and have some letters on file that you could easily send to somebody. So maybe that's a professor or somebody that you worked closely with, or somebody you got to know at your school, or maybe it's a past boss, or maybe it's where you volunteered, but you want to ask for people to write you a letter of recommendation, or at a minimum, ask them to be a reference if you got an offer and they wanted to talk, a company wanted to talk to them about you and your performance. So you want to have a list of about 3 to 5 people that will either write you a letter of recommendation and or be a reference if those companies want to call somebody to find out about you. So going on to LinkedIn, for those of you that are not on LinkedIn, you need to be, and you need to get your profile 100% complete. So your resume is a great tool to use to help you complete your profile. Your picture, you should have a professional picture on there, just a headshot. You want to update it in terms of including all of your work experience, volunteer experience. There's an area for skills. You can talk about, you know, the skills and things that you're interested in, things you do have experience with. That's a good place for keywords. And then you want to build your network and connect with people. And in my view of LinkedIn is to connect with anybody and everybody. And the reason is because it's all about that 6 degrees of separation. Somebody that you know is going to be able to help you probably get your foot in the door. Or maybe you don't know that person directly. Maybe because you're connected to me and I'm connected to somebody else at the company you're interested in working in, I can connect you now to that person and to that company. So I'm sort of the bridge between you and your next job potentially. But it's a great way to build your network and connect with people, asking for introductions and referrals and recommendations. There's a ask for a recommendation link on LinkedIn itself that somebody could write for you and then it will post automatically on your profile page. So that's sort of separate from this, when companies want to check references or letters of recommendation, but it's sort of in addition to, I would say, it's another place that you could ask for somebody that you know to say something nice about you that will then show up on your profile. The other reason to connect with people on LinkedIn is, just to get to know about other organizations or, just connecting and understanding what companies do. And so it's just asking them for maybe an informational meeting, which could be as simple as a phone call or a coffee or virtual coffee or lunch. Asking them if they have a few minutes to talk to you and tell you more about what their organization does and maybe specifically what they do at the organization. And oftentimes people are very willing to help connect you to other people that they know, whether it's at their organization or at another organization. LinkedIn's also great because there's organized, you can connect with people within groups and other organizations that are specific to an industry or a location or a specific job or chambers of commerce or just other specific groups. There's actually a group section or interest, I think is what it's called on LinkedIn, and you can join those groups. So I'm sure there's an IPC group. There's certainly, I'm in the Chicago area and I know there's plenty of Chicago networking groups. There's groups, if you just search that pertain to almost everything and anything. And it's a great place to just get to know more people, number one, connect with more people and see what those groups are talking about. If it's something specific to the industry you're interested in, you might learn a lot just from being parts of these groups and monitoring the conversations. And then certainly offering up any information you have to share with others. And I'm big on offering help to people on LinkedIn. And I think even extending, if you can do that to people, people are very willing to reciprocate. I think it goes both ways. So if you do ask somebody to have a conversation with you or an informational meeting, you always want to say to them, if there's anything I can ever do for you, please let me know. So you always want to reciprocate it. It definitely goes both ways. And then professional associations are another great place to network, certainly IPC, and there's plenty of other associations and organizations, and look for those that are specific to the job that you want. And we talked about mentors in the beginning, but mentors are a great place to ask questions, learn, get information. They can connect you with people. Maybe they will write a reference for you and just give you great advice. Questions? Any questions, Aaron?
Yeah, we do have one. So this is about networking really on LinkedIn. So Someone met a recruiter from Google at a conference, and they asked them to reach out, but they don't really know how to start the conversation or, how to go about it.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. Hi, so-and-so. It was great meeting you at the conference, reference the conference, the date, the city, wherever, be specific. You mentioned I should reach out and I would love to set up a time to talk more and to talk more about if they were talking about a specific opportunity or just to talk. Especially if they told you to reach out, that's all you need to say. And then provide your contact information.
Perfect. And on a similar note, there's a lot of students, really, I feel the need to mention, when you're a student, people want to go out of their way to help you. So if you are a current student, definitely take advantage of the informational meetings and just ask people to chat. Like, you're coming from a place of learning. So like if you wanted to go in and, there's a process engineer, you don't really know what they do. So just simply ask, like, can I get some insight into what you do day to day? And we try to, IPC in our foundation, we try to build connections with students and companies to fill that need and get some of those questions answered. But just definitely take advantage of it while you're a student, because once you graduate, people know you're just looking for a job.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I would agree. And I mean, I'm one of those people that's willing to help anybody, whether you're a student or not. And if I can help, I'll get to that at the end. I certainly will. But that is definitely great advice. You have a lot more tools while you're still a student at your fingertips.
Great. We do have one other one here. So we have a student who doesn't have a LinkedIn and they're curious. They feel that they don't have the experience or publications to make their LinkedIn look good. How do you combat that?
You know what? I think it doesn't have to be true. So here's the thing. LinkedIn is not your resume. It's a summary of your resume. I am not a fan of having every single bullet or car statement on your LinkedIn profile that you would have on your resume. So you can just do a short summary, and maybe you just have volunteer experience. Maybe you've never really had a job or an internship. That's okay. So put the volunteer experience, or maybe you've done more with education or research or whatever it may be. So it's okay if it's not as lengthy or detailed as you think it should be. Something is good to have to just, do a summary of who you are and what you're looking for. It's okay if it's not super detailed or doesn't have a ton of information. I mean, let's face it, you haven't had all this work experience yet or all this other type of experience yet. So just include what you've done to date, and that's okay.
Great, thanks. That is all at the moment.
Okay, so once you have all those things done and completed, and you've, applied to jobs, and you've now got your foot in the door, and somebody's called you and they said, hey, we want to interview you. So how do you prepare for that? So interviews today are Zoom. They're automated, which is a new thing, and then in person, and they're all common and they're all possible, and you just need to be prepared for any of those scenarios. And these automated interviews, it's really just talking to a computer. It's like you're on Zoom, but you're like talking to a robot sort of thing. And I know several people that have done that recently, and I'm sure it feels weird, but I would just say approach it like you would a Zoom or an in-person interview. Be prepared, speak clearly, and we'll talk about that, all the things that you need to do in order to be prepared for any of these interviews, and they're all very similar. So what's your attire? Your attire and etiquette. You need to be, early, and on time to me is 5 minutes early. So 5 to 10 minutes early, log on, show up at the location, log on, no more than 5 minutes early, I think is perfectly fine for an online interview. Dress neatly and appropriately. Make sure if you're sitting, have your hands in your lap, your 2 feet on the floor. Be polite, try and smile. It's the Zoom attire. So they're only going to see you from, maybe chest up, waist up, and just make sure that you look neat and clean. Most importantly, have maybe a notebook handy and a pen. Certainly your resume, anything nearby that you might need to be prepared for the interview. And then what do you do before the interview? You want to research the company. You want to have questions prepared. You want to know the interview is just as much, except the automated, interview is just as much for you as it is for the company. So an automated interview, you may not get to ask questions, but if you're interviewing over Zoom or with a real person, you definitely want to have at least 3 to 5 really good questions to ask. And they can be specific to the job, specific to the company. It's always nice to ask something about the interviewer. How long have you been with the company? What do you like most about working here? Or, what is your favorite thing about working at this company? So you just need to be prepared. And if you prepare in advance, you will feel way more comfortable and confident when you go into the interview. Questions you should be prepared to ask are typically behavioral-based questions. So behavioral-based questions are questions that are going to ask you to give an example of something you did in your past or recent past and describe that, because behavioral-based questions tell the interviewer they don't want to know what you would do. They want to know what you did do, because it's going to give an indication of how you will perform in that job in the future. So I just provided a few questions here in certain categories that you could be asked and should be prepared to ask. Erin, are you going to share this presentation, or are people going to have access to this later?
We intend to, if that's okay.
Great. So they can come back to this and look at the questions. So I'm not going to read through all of them, but I'll just, read through 1 or 2. But like a question around culture could be, tell me about a time in the last week when you've been satisfied, energized, and productive at work or school. What were you doing? So here they're looking for a very specific example. So, instead of, a lot of people tend to say when I'm interviewing them, well, I would, or I might do that, versus, oh, the last time I felt satisfied is when I just worked really hard on this research paper and, talking through what did happen. So that's really important, is to make sure you're listening to the question and answering the question. And it's okay to ask the interviewer to repeat the question. If you didn't hear it the first time, or maybe you just need them to say it again, perfectly fine. Some other questions that you might be asked could be around leadership, growth potential, or prioritization. So, tell me about a time when you had to juggle several projects at the same time. How did you organize your time? What was the result? So they want you to be specific. They want to know, about a time. You could talk about when you were in class and you had 5 classes going on and you had, all these big projects due within the same week, how you handled that, talk that through, and let them know, how you prepared for it and then how things turned out. So it's always okay to jot down in a notebook or on a piece of paper, the questions, so you can just reference it if you need to. So that's perfectly okay. And then questions that you should be prepared to ask. What does success look like in this position? How does the company measure success? What would I expect? What would you expect for me after I start, after 3 months or a year, or whatever the term of the position is, especially if it's finite, like an internship? Find out a little bit more. And these are just sample questions, and these are not the only questions you should ask. These are just a few examples. Critically important is a thank you. You want to send an email is perfectly fine. A handwritten, note in the mail takes too long to get there these days. So within 24 hours at most, you need to hang up the phone, hang up the Zoom, leave the meeting, sit down at your computer and draft a nice, short, sweet, sincere email, thanking the person for the conversation or the informational meeting or the interview, whatever it may have been, that whatever type of meeting you had with that person, you want to reference it, thank them, let them know that you're very interested. Even if you're not so interested, still thank them and let them know, or ask them when you can expect to hear from them again, or provide your contact information. And as simple as that. But you want to send it an email, because you never know, even if you're not interested in the job or the company that you spoke to the person about or interviewed for, there might be something else down the road that you might be interested in. So you want to keep your doors open. You never want to burn any bridges, and you just want to be cordial and polite and gracious. So that's why thank you emails are critically important. Questions? No? Okay. All right. So we're coming to the end here. Here's some resources, and we talked about some of these at the beginning. Your career services at your college or university. My website, I have a lot of blogs on there that short, easy to read, like a few, usually 3 to 7 tips sometimes on what you can do in different situations. LinkedIn is a great resource. Get your profile done and built and complete. Connect with people on LinkedIn, network there, join groups, research groups. Indeed is a great place to look for jobs. ZipRecruiter, Handshake. LinkedIn also definitely a great place to look for jobs. I feel like a lot of college students are more familiar with Indeed and looking for jobs and internships there versus LinkedIn. And I would say LinkedIn is equally as important. And also company websites. Go to the company websites and go to their careers tab. See what jobs they have open. If there's specific companies you're really interested in or really excited about, go directly to their websites. Chambers of commerce. Join professional associations, and a lot of associations have student memberships or discounted memberships for students. So that's a great way to get in and to start networking with people. And then, as I mentioned already, the networking groups, you can search them on LinkedIn. So other questions that anybody has at this time, I am more than happy to answer if there are any.
Yeah, so we're opening up here. If anybody wants to unmute and ask, they're certainly welcome to. If not, feel free to post in the chat or the Q&A any questions related to resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, where to find jobs, how to interview. And Lisa is standing by. Although at the moment we don't have any.
That's okay. And we answered a lot along the way. So I'll just say, while we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions, everyone is welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. The big thing about LinkedIn is that 6 degrees of separation. So I'm connected with thousands of people on LinkedIn. Do I know everybody personally? No. But even if I don't know them personally, if you reach out to me and you say, hey, I saw this job at XYZ company and I see you're connected to Jane Doe at XYZ company, would you mind introducing me to her? And I, of course, would introduce you to this person. And that goes for me or anybody else on LinkedIn. It's just a great way to connect with people and potentially get your foot in the door somewhere.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have one, so we have, that's a funny question that just posted in the chat. We have a mother on the call and she's asking how you can transition from motherhood to the workforce.
Okay, so in my personal business, I've worked with a lot of people who have done that. And it's so interesting because recently, well, probably a couple of years ago now, I worked with somebody on their resume and she was thinking she had no experience. She hadn't worked for years. She raised her kids. They both went off to college. And I actually knew her a little bit, and she's in my community. And I said, what are you talking about? You have no experience. You've been like the president of the PTO and in charge of like the parents organization and organized all these things. I mean, true leadership skills. And there was tons of other things that she'd done that I didn't even know about. And so we talked that through and we looked at all the things that she's volunteered for or done in her life. Maybe she didn't get paid for them. Maybe they're, not jobs specific to, exactly what she wants to do, but her skills are transferable. She has leadership skills. She has organizational skills. She's a go-getter. She's an innovator, all these things. So it was really just working individually with her and talking that through to help her identify what skills she has and how they transfer into the workforce. So it definitely can be done. And there's probably a lot of things on your resume, written or unwritten yet, that you have that you could definitely transfer to the working world.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's see. We have a few others. What's the best way to find an internship? And would any reference be needed, or does it help?
References are great. Absolutely. You should have a go-to list. As I mentioned in the presentation, a go-to list of people that you feel comfortable asking for a reference from. And you need to talk to those people in advance, of course, and then give them the heads up once you apply to something or once you potentially might have an offer coming, and let them know, hey, this company may be contacting you. Going about finding an internship is just like going about finding a job. So it's going to career services, it's using your network, it's going to company websites and looking to see what internships they have available. It's going to LinkedIn, it's going to Indeed, it's just doing searches. I'm helping a couple students right now that are looking for internships, not engineering related, but otherwise. And it's as simple as just typing in the keywords in jobs. For example, in LinkedIn or in Indeed, you type in internship, you could type in your location or remote if you want remote, and just see what comes up, or engineering and internships or marketing internships, whatever they may be. You just type in a few keywords and you want to see what comes up. But the networking piece is really, really important. So just applying to jobs or internships is not necessarily a guaranteed way of finding an internship. You really have to do that next step, and you have to reach out to people and network and connect with people and ask for those introductions and ask for those meetings to get your foot in the door.
Great, thank you. We do have a few more now. How do you find a job in an area that doesn't have very many openings?
So if you're willing to be remote, that's great. Or the job can be remote, that's great, because I feel like companies more and more are offering remote opportunities. I think you have to be flexible. If you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of internships or jobs or a lot of just, opportunities, I think you have to be flexible. You have to be flexible about, could I commute further? Could I potentially relocate? You have to think about all those things and maybe make a list for yourself, prioritizing what's the most important and what things are you willing to sacrifice.
Very good. What do you think about adding a picture to your resume?
I'm not a big fan because LinkedIn has your photo and you'll have your link to your LinkedIn profile. And to me, it just takes up space when you could have other more pertinent information on there. Not necessary.
Okay, thanks. What should you do if a company withdraws their internship offer?
You should say, thank you for the opportunity. I'm so sorry to hear that. If anything else changes or other opportunities open up, please let me know. Always take the high road is the bottom line, and start looking for something else and doing all the tips and tools and tricks that we discussed today.
All right, we have a few more and then we'll probably wrap up soon. Do companies look at your social media before they hire you?
Typically, they sure do. Yes. So be careful what you post. And I'm sure everybody's heard that 1,000 times over again, but I would be very cautious about what you post. And if there's something that you think is questionable, take it down.
Okay. All right. Any other questions in the chat? We don't have anything coming up.
Okay.
All right. So, Lisa, I'll let you wrap up and then I'll do a send off.
I was just going to say thank you for inviting me to speak. This has been great. If anyone wants to follow up with me or connect, certainly send me an invite on LinkedIn and maybe just type in the message that you heard me speak on this for this presentation with IPC, and I would be happy to connect with you. And if there's anything I can do to help you get your foot in the door anywhere else, I'm happy to do that. And I appreciate everything. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Lisa. We really appreciate it. And thanks everybody in the chat and online for joining us today and participating and giving us a good talk. Just as a reminder, if you aren't aware, we do these talks once a month. So we have a career and technical focused webinar. This was one of those. And then we also do more of a Q&A style session. We bring in engineers or HR people from business within the IPC network, and we do those at the end of the month. So we do 2 events per month. You're welcome back to attend those. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'll send out a link to this recording when we have it posted. Anybody that I emailed prior, just keep up with me personally via email. And if you would like to get in touch with Lisa, we can do that as well. We had a couple questions that I didn't get to. I will, that were, on different topics. I'll take those directly with you and we'll go from there. So thank you all. We're getting some thanks in the chat. So thanks again, Lisa, and thanks to everybody who attended.